Hi, I'm Dr. Ganser. I'm the president of the Pinellas County Chiropractic Society, the PCCS, and we are continuing our series on keeping us healthy. And we're going to discuss today one of my favorite topics, and that is the comparison and difference of an antioxidant versus an anti-inflammatory. However, many times dietary and lifestyle changes can support both. However, there is actually a quite distinct difference between them. And we're going to dive into a little bit of those details so that you can selectively, intelligently choose food choices and supplements. Of course, we want that intelligent eating concept where you're eating to support the body's processes so that you can heal and regenerate at a better, faster, more efficient level. And a lot of times we can do that by protecting against oxidative stress and inflammation. So we know over the last couple decades that a lot of research has gone into inflammation. And most people know they don't want it. And most people know that if it's around in excessive levels, it's not good, right? So it's not new to be fighting inflammation. However, less talked about as a key word is oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is just as gnarly of an excess molecule in the body that can cause a lot of damage. And it's right up there with too much inflammation. And these two go hand in hand. So, inflammation are going to be the molecules, again, very molecular, body's communication. Remember, we've talked about cytokines, leukotrienes, chemokines. These are small proteins that the body uses to communicate. And they are necessary at low basal, everyday physiological levels. And this is true for both free radicals, which are the keyword associated with oxidative stress, as well as the inflammatory chemokines, cytokines, leukotrienes. These are the keywords of inflammation when you boil down to what is actually happening on the molecular level. So if you watched my video from last month, then you recognized, or excuse me, I guess that would be 2 months ago now, for COVID and ways to support the immune system. I talked about preventing the cytokine storm. And the cytokine storm are cytokines. Again, I threw in the tidbit chemokines and leukotrienes, a very big family of prostaglandins, and that's what we're going to talk about today. However, a few key examples of these are very commonly interleukin 1, interleukin 6, tumor necrosis factor, and interferon. So we need these at normal physiological levels. And there are times when the body has a trauma, an injury, or something that needs to manage. In the case of a COVID and or viral infection, it's fighting a foreign body or foreign substance. So the body uses these pro-inflammatory molecules, cytokines, chemokines, leukotrienes, collectively also called prostaglandins, prostacyclins. These are big words for how the body communicates. So we need to make sure that we have them. However, we also need to make sure that we don't keep them around longer than they need to be because they will cause peripheral damage. So the important part to think about is that we can actually directly control this because of the very important essential fatty acid. There are two, so let me add a plural on there. The essential fatty acids are omega-3 and omega-6. And a lot of times we hear you need to avoid omega-6. That's going to be your linoleic acid that converts to your arachidonic acid, and that is known as a very pro-inflammatory molecule, hence essential fatty acid, which is a hydrocarbon chain. The other one, which is our anti-inflammatory, our good guy, that is a alpha-linolenic acid. Now, I like to teach my students to pronounce it incorrectly, alpha-linolenic, because it rhymes with 3, so you can say threnic. So that's a funny little way that we remember it in class. So omega-3, which is your marine fish and your a lot of your salmons and the sardines, mackerel, canned smaller fish, those are wonderful sources of omega-3. A non-marine source would be kelp and, well, I guess that's kelp, it's not fish, and or your flax. So we want to increase these in our diet because they will directly become one of the prostaglandins, prostacyclins, cytokines, chemokines, and they all kind of work together. So cytokines, small molecules, interleukin 1, interleukin 6, tumor necrosis factor, interferon. There are many more, but those are the very common ones, especially associated with pro-inflammation. Those are going to communicate and interact with the category of inflammation that I'm directly talking about with the essential fatty acids. And without getting into too many other really big words that are not clinically relevant unless you're writing papers and reading papers, what the essential fatty acids give us when the body digests them and incorporates them into many of our tissues and organs, we have a cascade where the essential fatty acids, whether it's omega-6 or omega-3, many times that's going to be your arachidonic acid, again, omega-6, or your EPA. That's a very potent anti-inflammatory omega-3, and that's how the body works. It's how it communicates. So under the direction of inflammatory signaling, injury, inflammation, infection, some of the key reasons that the body's giving some additional feedback and stimulus, they take these essential fatty acids that we've incorporated into our tissue and our organs, and it puts it through a biochemical enzymatic reaction. You know, I like these big words, and they generate these molecules of inflammation called prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and thromboxanes. Collectively, these are the eicosanoids. So when your body has dietarily and or supplementally received more of the omega-3, you will have more of the omega-3 fatty acids placed into your tissues and organs. Many times your alpha-linolenic acid will convert into your EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, and then that is going to be more available when this enzymatic cascade under inflammatory signals occurs. And that's going to generate anti-inflammatory eicosanoids, and that's going to help your platelets, it's going to help your heart rhythm, it's going to help different tissues communicate with less inflammation. However, the alternative is true. If you are eating a high Western diet and a lot of processed foods that don't really carry a lot of the nutrition that home-cooked foods and produce, plant-based diets deliver. And in the case of essential fatty acids, a lot of our cotton oils and vegetable oils, very high in processed foods. And then a lot of our grain-fed livestock, also very high in omega-6. So the omega-6 is the arachidonic acid. And just like our optimal marine-based and anti-inflammatory omega-3, which gets incorporated into your body and your tissues and your organs if you supplement with it and eat it, the same thing happens. So they actually compete for the same place. So if you're eating a Western diet and it's high in processed foods and you're not supplementing with your omega-3 fish oils and your EPA and DHA, and then on top of it, you have a very high meat diet, which has a lot of grain-fed animals, livestock, your ratio of the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio gets skewed. So if they compete to get into your organs and your tissues, what's the best way that you can help your body? Because if you have more omega-6 in your tissues and your organs, and then the signal comes along to enzymatically convert these by communication signaling into the eicosanoids, when you have more omega-6, even though it's the same reactions, it's a different fatty acid, and it gives us a different prostaglandin, thromboxane, and or leukotriene, again, eicosanoids. These are molecules of communication, and they can direct tissue to be pro or anti-inflammatory responding. So a body habitus of greater omega-6 and arachidonic acid is going to experience more pain and more degeneration because it sets up a cascade of excessive amounts of these communicating molecules. So one of the very best ways that we can combat pain, compound degeneration, and also simultaneously, if you do these things, you are also going to age at a slower rate. You're going to have less degenerative, demential, cognitive, activity, fatigue problems, because you're going to set up an anti-inflammatory body habitus. So eat less omega-6 sources, such as your cotton oils and vegetable oils, your processed foods, and cut down on the grain-fed livestock. And while you're doing that, also increase your omega-3. You need to really be doing both to optimize it. And different individuals will benefit from different dosages. It's recommended, if you have not been supplementing with fish oil, to start at 3 grams a day. That's definitely going to be a very good dose to at least begin. Within several months, you should definitely absolutely feel some benefits, and depending on the situation, you can cut down into a maintenance dose, and if you need more from an inflammatory injury, then you can increase it. However, it's best if you also try to pair that with eliminating some of the processed foods. So that's our anti-inflammatory cascade. Now, in addition, I'm going to confuse it just a little, but this is a really cool tidbit and a clinical pearl. One way to decrease a body habitus is to directly influence which fatty acid, either your omega-3 or your omega-6, goes into the tissues and the organs. So supplement with omega-3, eat some of the canned fish and the omega-3 sources, put flax into some of your shakes and your salads, your smoothies, and then also at the same time, cut down on the processed foods. It's one of the best ways to prevent omega-6 from being in excess. However, we want to have an actual effect on that pathway. Remember, I said enzymatic conversion. So if we can enzymatically convert something, we can influence it. And one of the best ways to cut down on excessive inflammatory signaling, remember our eicosanoids, big keyword, prostaglandins, prostacyclins, leukotrienes, and thromboxanes. These are the communicating molecules that come from the essential fatty acids. We want to cut down on how many of those are potentially communicating in tissue if we have a tissue of injury and or trauma or healing. So what we can do is take natural anti-inflammatories that support that cascade. And many people are already doing this and they don't know it, because when you take an over-the-counter aspirin or an over-the-counter ibuprofen, or if you have a NSAID, anti-pain, anti-inflammatory prescription from a primary care or a specialist, you are exactly influencing that cascade. You probably just didn't know that you were slowing down the rate that these eicosanoids were working and being synthesized. Because when you take aspirin and ibuprofen, and you are directly influencing how many of the essential fatty acid, omega-3 and omega-6s are being acted on. So if you can do this naturally, then why would we not substitute an element, constituent, a botanical, a plant that does the exact same thing, but with less side effects? Because if you can ever have a natural source instead of a medication, which is synthetic, it's always optimal. And many times when I introduce this to patients and they understand that it does the exact same thing, acting on the exact same pathway, but with less side effects and less negative outcomes, you can completely substitute and wean yourself off of some of the over-the-counters and or prescriptions. And the top ones that I recommend that are known to directly influence this pathway and cut down on pain and degeneration are boswellia, which is also called frankincense, your turmeric and curcumin. You also have your white willow, and you have bioflavonoids, which are some of the colored antioxidants that exist in the produce, fruits, and vegetables. So those are some excellent ways to positively influence anti-inflammatories and support a body habitus shift away from inflammation into an anti-inflammatory status. Now, simultaneously, we can't ignore the difference of oxidative stress and how we're going to bring in antioxidants. So Antioxidants are very simply vitamins, minerals, and proteins that are protective against damaging molecules. Without getting into very extended scientific explanations, when you have these damaging molecules, they have a very specific chemical makeup. And we call them free radicals because they don't have a paired electron. And when they don't do that, then they want to attack anything around it and they'll steal it. And that's basically oxidative stress. However, antioxidants and antioxidant enzymes, as we talked about last month when we needed to discuss the importance of our mineral dependent protection. Remember, we mentioned superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, and catalase is the top three intrinsic, meaning the body has this built into the genome for protection. Those are the top three. However, we need minerals for them to efficiently do their job, which is fighting free radicals and preventing and protecting us against oxidative stress. And if you recall, that would be copper, zinc, manganese, iron as heme, and selenium. I think I forgot to mention selenium in last month's video, so there you go. You also need selenium. So oxidative stress is known to damage DNA, which can lead to cancers. It's also known to damage proteins, which can cause protein deficiency and impair some of the jobs and physiological roles that proteins have. And additionally, it can also damage our fatty acids. And that's called lipid peroxidation. And that's one of the most prevalent negative occurrences in people's blood vessels. And that's basically what's happening in our atherosclerosis and a lot of our lipid disorders of metabolic syndrome. And if you protect against lipid peroxidation, you are directly improving oxidative stress, because if you fight oxidative stress, you are eliminating free radicals. If you eliminate free radicals, then you cut down on oxidative stress. If you cut down on oxidative stress in your blood vessels, guess what? You're protecting yourself against a lot of the negative effects of hypercholesterolemia, as I had just mentioned, because that's directly correlated with excessive oxidative stress occurring in the blood vessels at the level of free radicals attacking fatty acids. Again, calling that lipid peroxidation. You want to eliminate that as best as you can. And of course, we don't want any oxidative stress damaging our DNA and or our proteins either. So how do you protect against oxidative stress? And what that is fighting free radicals. So the top ones that you need to incorporate into your supplementation and choose foods that are high in these, and make sure that you're eating the rainbow, as we already talked about, for phytonutrients and antioxidants. You want to take into account your vitamin C. You also can do vitamin E. However, I strongly recommend not supplementing with vitamin E until you've had at least 2 weeks of replacing vitamin C in your diet. You also want to increase the intrinsic, very potent antioxidant tripeptide protein, which we call glutathione. Glutathione is very important in protecting every cell in our body. And when you cannot and don't have enough of it and you can't synthesize it, then you are at a greater risk of oxidative stress and many of the damaging effects of it. You can support glutathione very simply by increasing a supplementation called NAC, N-acetylcysteine. And we also need to be eating our sulfur foods and make sure that we have sulfur bioavailable, so you can cook with onions and garlic, and make sure that you're incorporating as many of the brassica family of vegetables. It's a wonderful source of sulfur, and that would be broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, and bok choy, cauliflower. There's many other ones you can search, but those are some of my top favorite ones. Additionally, you want to be taking into account both alpha lipoic acid and coenzyme Q. Both of those are very potent antioxidants. They are protective against oxidative stress. And the benefit of having those as supplements in your cupboard is they also support metabolism. So you might just lose a little bit of weight. You might have a little bit more energy because it's going to combat fatigue at the same time, because of how they function at the physiological metabolic level of metabolism. So you're protecting yourself against oxidative stress, and at the same time, you're going to ultimately have downstream positive effects because of their other roles in the body. So vitamin C, glutathione through N-acetylcysteine and your sulfur foods. We want to do vitamin E, coenzyme Q, and our alpha lipoic acid. In addition, you need to have proteins because proteins are how we synthesize the intrinsic antioxidant enzymes. Again, I'm going to list them off. That's your superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, and your catalase. You have to have amino acids as protein to build proteins. Intrinsic antioxidant enzymes are proteins, so you cannot be protein deficient. And to follow up and finish on this thought of antioxidants, I'm going to repeat myself again. In order for those enzymes, these proteins, which are these free radical fighters, you've got to have the minerals that support them. It's like a lock and a key. If you've got the protein, but you don't have the lock that turns it on, you don't have a functioning a protective enzyme. So you've got to have your copper, zinc, manganese. We also need iron, which converts into heme in the case of what we're worried about for our enzymes for protection, and selenium. So that is a crash course on the difference between antioxidants and fighting oxidative stress, which we're doing almost completely with essential nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. That's how we do it. You got to eat it. You got to supplement with it. If you're already a body habitus of chronic pain and or degenerative processes, traumas, current other comorbidity states, you have to have these at even higher levels. You will find that when you incorporate these, you're going to heal better, you're going to feel better, and you're going to be more protected against a lot of the pain, the degeneration, and your body's going to fight a lot of the viruses and a lot of the infections that are flying around a whole lot better. Remember, we want to support the immune system in the case of a lot of the virus infections. However, we are now adding in protecting it at an even higher level, which fighting viruses, infections, and supporting the immune system to do so is only one benefit. We want to protect against pain and degeneration that is directly correlated to chronic inflammation and chronic oxidative stress. And you fight inflammation with your essential fatty acids, and you fight oxidative stress with your vitamins, your minerals, and your antioxidants. So the intelligent eating lesson for the week is incorporating the same things I've already said. Eat your proteins, don't be protein deficient. Eat your rainbow. You need to have your plant-based vitamins and minerals, and that's primarily from your fruits and your vegetables. And if you're not eating these things, you better be supplementing. If you don't eat enough protein, you get a protein shake in your morning routine. And if you're not eating the fruits and vegetables, then you have a greens in powder as part of your regimen. It's how you have to survive. And I still recommend, even for you that eat it, it's still a good idea to have one shake a day. Get your protein in, get your phytogreens in, and you know what? Fight oxidative stress and fight anti-inflammation at the same time. All right, well, until then, I hope you stay happy and healthy. And I believe we're diving into liver detox and the importance of sulfur, and some tips to make sure that we are getting rid of a high body burden toxic load.